Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. I was a little bit ill for last week, and so I didn't make any videos, and I've been wanting to make this one for some time, and so I'm finally going to take the time to do this one. I'm excited about it, and I thought, you know, for my first time back, when I make a video I've been really wanting to make for a while. So today I want to talk about my favorite category of folding knives, and the kind of knife that if you see me on the street and say, hey, what are you carrying? It'll most likely be a knife that falls into this category, and that is the hard use folder category. So the two things that I want to do in this video is to point out a little bit about what a hard use folder is and why I like to carry one, and then to add that when we consider that category of knife, there's really something for everybody, something for every budget, something for every purpose. You know, whether you're a police officer or a soldier or a firefighter or a construction worker, and whatever budget is reflected by all those occupations, there's a knife that I think is probably right for you that can be considered hard use. Now, how do I define hard use? That's the first thing that I want to point out. I would say anything that goes above and beyond EDC. Okay, so maybe it's self-defense, maybe it's combat in the field over, you know, in the sandbox or something. Maybe it's bushcraft. Maybe it's skinning out an animal. All these things are generally more than what we want to do with our EDC knife, but they're all within the realm of possibility for a hard use folder. Now, every hard use folder is not perfectly suited to every one of those applications, and so you'll have to pick the one that matches your needs the best. But I would say all of those things are beyond EDC and require something a little tougher, a little bigger, a little more durable than what you're normally going to be carrying in your pocket, or what most people are normally going to be carrying in their pocket. And so that's how I define hard use. Let's give a couple of examples. I would say a quintessential hard use folder is the Cold Steel Recon 1. Just a fantastic knife, a great combination of size, weight, functionality, ergonomics, and I think ergonomics is a pretty important aspect for a hard use folder, because think about if you're using a knife hard, if you're putting it under a lot of stress, that means the hand holding the knife is under that much stress. And so ergonomics is going to be pretty key in that discussion. Now, one other thing I want to say before I start getting into examples and the different categories of hard use folder, and that is, I think that we should recognize that the trend toward hard use folders in the production knife industry is driven by that trend in the custom knife market and the mid-tech market. You know, so there's a lot of those customs out there that are just beefy titanium frame locks with thick blade steel and thick scales, thick frames, and just designed to be overbuilt and super strong. And so that trend translates into the production folding market. Now, again, the mid-tech market, the Striders and the Hinderers are driving, again, the popularity of knives that approach fixed blade strength. And I say approach because no folding knife can actually be a fixed blade and should never be used as one, and I want to make sure that's clear. But the desire for a super tough, super strong knife is something that I think is common to most of us knife users and enthusiasts. Okay? Now, there are some knives missing, and I'm just looking here at the knives that I have, and I'm going to say Spyderco is not well represented today, even though I love Spyderco. They probably do lean more toward the EDC category. However, I think of knives like the Spyderco Zabo, like the Spyderco Tough, like the Manix 2 XL. These are definitely hard use knives and would definitely fit that category. I just didn't bring any of my Spydercos with me, although I will say I think there are some Spydercos that fit that hard use role, just maybe not as many as other companies, compared to, let's say, to Cold Steel, where almost every one of their knives would be considered a hard use knife. All right, so let's get into this and start out with the budget-friendly hard use folders that can really do a lot, that can go above and beyond the call of duty. And I think a great example of that, let's zoom in a little bit so you can see these knives better. There we go. Here is the SCH 304 from Charade. This is a solid stainless steel frame lock like all the other 300 knives. Great lockup, strong as nails, super thick blade stock, just a big hunk of steel. And you know, if you needed to throw a monkey wrench in the works of some machine to get it to stop, this would be the knife you'd want to chuck in there, because man, it is a solid piece of steel, and it weighs what you would expect a solid chunk of steel to weigh. You know, this guy's sitting at around 9 ounces. One warning I would give, and if you plan to put this knife into hard use or any of the Charade knives, really any budget knife, just keep in mind that sometimes in production, budget folders do not have to meet the same strict tolerances of a more expensive knife in a similar category, which means although my lockup is awesome, although my deployment is awesome, you may want to get your hands on this knife before you buy it. You may want to test it out, and I've tested this extensively. I've done lots of spine whacking, I've done lots of overstriking. This knife is one of the most solid lockups you can get, but again, remember that the specs on that lock geometry may not be that tightly controlled. It's made in China, it's made to be cost effective, and so keep that in the back of your mind as you buy a hard use folder. This thing, you couldn't get any more hard use than any knife from the SCH 300 lineup, and I just have one knife representing that. Another great example of a budget hard use folder is the Crawford Casper from CRKT. This is a very budget friendly knife. It is a liner lock, which I still classify as hard use, because especially this liner lock and a few others, they're strong. And again, this is a knife that, because it's inexpensive, I have purposely gone above and beyond trying to make sure that I can trust it. So I've done lots of spine whacks, I've done lots of overstrikes, I've done lots of wiggle tests, trying however I can to get this lock to fail, and never had an issue. And so because of that, I have lots of confidence in this. Now, this is obviously designed to be a combat folder. It does have the locks feature from CRKT. It's designed for combat, but you know, skin a fish with this, you've got an animal, look at that belly. Be a great skinning knife, right? I think this knife would do lots of good, lots of hard use applications, and do it at a budget where if you are going to put this knife into a situation where it could get broken, let's say you got to pry something, let's say you got to jam that into somewhere that you know is going to mess up the finish, let's say you've got to really torque on it. If you break it, big deal, you buy another one for 20 bucks. And I think that's, you know, that's a consideration when we talk about hard use. Some of the ones that we're going to build up to, maybe you would hesitate to put them into the use that they maybe even are intended for. Here's another, well, it's an Enlin EL08 or Charade SCH 104. This guy, again, very, very tough. Now, this is lighter than both of the previous knives I've shown you, and a little more expensive, but not a lot. Probably looking at about 25 bucks here to 30, where the previous two were like between 17 and 22. This one now you're up to that $25 price point. Still a great blade, tons of steel, clip point, lots of belly, of course stainless steel frame lock, G10 on this side. Very, very strong lockup. This is one where I've messed with it doing overstrikes and all that kind of stuff, because again, it's a budget knife. You want to be overly diligent, I would suggest. But great, great, super tough folder. The benefit of this one is that it's going to EDC better than the previous two, just because of the thinness and because of the lighter weight. Now, it's not lightweight, it's still around 6 ounces, but it's lighter than the other two, and it's thinner. Now, it's still just as large, but the carryability of this one is definitely a little better. Let's continue with a knife that was actually specifically designed for bushcraft. And this is a knife that I can personally attest to very well. Of all the knives in my collection, I've carried this one the most. I've had it the longest, and that's simply why. I had this knife before I really had a collection. I did have 15 or 20 knives at the time, but this knife has gotten a lot of pocket time, a lot of use. I have literally done everything that you could ever think to do with a knife, even stuff you're not supposed to do. I've pulled staples, I have cut cardboard, I have cut trees, I have skinned animals, you name it, this knife has done it, and it has never once let me down. Now, I did about 6 or 8 months ago take it apart and really clean and polish every surface and get it back into, you know, a more a little nicer state. And again, a testament to the quality of this knife is that when I did that, it came out looking almost like the day it was bought. Just a beautiful blade. That is, of course, the Rat Model 1. I haven't even told you the name of it. But a great knife, great bushcraft knife. Probably of all the knives I'm going to show you, this one will excel really well at bushcraft stuff, and it's designed for that purpose. Totally great knife. And again, very carryable and very useful. Not all of these knives, I would say, fit into the EDC category perfectly, but certainly this one does. Now, continuing on this scale, another knife, and this is one of those knives that I own that I feel like is almost perfect. This is the Cold Steel Code 4. Now, some people would say, are you sure that's a hard use knife? Yes, I'm sure. You have solid aluminum scales, you've got a triad lock, and look at the blade. The blade is specifically designed to carry as much width of steel as close to the tip as possible to add strength, so that if you're stabbing into something, if you're prying on something, you're not going to break that tip off. Look at that tip. It's very, very thick, very strong. Now, one cool thing about this knife is the hollow grind. I love a hollow grind on a knife where they're trying to carry a lot of blade steel. You get all that blade steel, it makes it thick, and you don't want a thick knife for slicing. So by using a hollow grind, you still get a nice thin edge geometry whilst getting a lot of strength in the blade. Cold Steel Code 4 is one of those knives that is a Mary Poppins blade as far as I'm concerned, practically perfect in every way. Just a beautiful knife. And here I would suggest you've got a hard use knife. This thing can be used for combat, it can be used for bushcraft, it can be used for industry, and yet it looks like a gentleman's folder. You can carry it Monday through Friday and still carry it in your suit on Sunday. Great blade. You've seen this one a minute ago, but here's another cold steel. Got to have some cold steels in a discussion of hard use folders. This is the Recon 1. Again, extremely capable blade. Probably leaning toward combat, but no question this could do a lot of bushcraft. And this is, of all these knives, this knife I actually did cut down a tree with, just because I was with some guys in the woods. We had been hunting, and they said, "Come on, cutting down a tree with a knife." And so we had to test it out. And this knife passed with flying colors. Cut a tree down, no problem. Not only that, but it's very lightweight, very easy to carry. And if you need a combat knife, a large heavy-duty folder that you don't want to, that's not going to be impossible to pocket carry every day, I think this is a great option because it's so lightweight, because there's no liners in these scales, that it's very light, and it's not even too thick. Certainly it's bigger in pretty much every dimension than the Code 4, but if you need that size for some purpose, great option. Continuing kind of up the scale, let's take a look at the ZT-0560. Again, definitely a hard use folder. Of course, zero tolerance is synonymous with hard use, right? We know that's their stock and trade, and certainly this is no exception. You've got LMAX steel. LMAX, of course, is known not so much for edge retention as it is for toughness, for durability. You've got a design of this blade that allows it to carry a lot of width, a lot of strength out to the tip. Add to that a flat grind, and that tip is very strong. You're going to be really hard pressed to break it, especially considering the steel type in the LMAX. Titanium frame lock, so very strong lockup. Extremely good functionality. The only drawback I would say to this knife is the caged ball bearings. Certain hard use applications, if there's a lot of dirt and a lot of crap, it's going to get into those ball bearings, and it may cause this to be a little rough. I've never heard of one not being operable, but you just need to know that can interfere. And it's not the end of the world. Spray some WD-40 in there, lubricate your knife again. By the way, keep in mind, WD-40 is a cleaner, it's not a lubricant. So if you use it on a knife, that's fine, but you have to lubricate afterward. WD-40 will break down whatever lubricating you have in there. So it's a great way to clean a knife. It's a great way, if you get your knife wet, soak it with WD-40. But just keep in mind it's not a lubricant, okay? Zero tolerance needs to be represented here, and there you go, the 0560. One last knife, and now we're definitely into the high-end category. And I said that, you know, I didn't care what your interest was, whether you wanted to carry a $20 knife or a $200 knife, you can find a great hard use folder. And here's the Benchmade Contigo. Now this is the KnifeWorks exclusive version in M390 steel, which is known to hold an edge very well. And I can honestly say that this is the best edge holding knife that I own. It is also the hardest to sharpen, but I mean, hard to sharpen is kind of relative. You know, give you, instead of 20 minutes, it may take half an hour, right? Not the end of the world. But great blade, super strong. I absolutely think the Axis lock qualifies as a strong lock, strong enough to be characterized as a hard use folder. And the Benchmade Contigo, especially in its normal form with the other steel, I don't remember what the other steel is, maybe D2, is certainly a hard use folder, no question about it. And what a cool blade in addition to that. Now this one of course is especially cool as far as I'm concerned because of the different colored scales and the stainless steel blade. I love this in stainless steel. But hopefully all of those knives demonstrate the point that I'm trying to make, that whoever you are, whatever your application, however much weight you're willing to carry, whatever size of knife you're willing to carry, there's a hard use knife for you. And a hard use knife is great because it can just do anything. You know that whatever life throws at you, you've got a knife that will deal. Now, I'm going to add one last thing to this video, and that is a lot of times if I'm carrying some of these knives, let's say on a particular day I'm carrying the Recon 1, I will often pair it with this guy or a similar blade. This is the Cold Steel Tough Light, just a great little EDC blade. But it allows me to use a knife in circumstances where maybe there would be a question about people's comfort level with knives. And so, yeah, I pull out this guy, open your mail or open a package or whatever, and no one's going to bat an eyelash, rather than, you know, pulling out this thing and everyone going, whoa, what in the heck kind of knife is that? This way, you know, you've got something small and light, and it's so small and so light that carrying it in addition to another knife is not a big issue as far as I'm concerned. So that's a little tip that you may use if you're like me, really into hard use folders. All right, there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I've made my point. My point is that I just love hard use folders. I hope you do too. I think I've explained a little bit about why that is. And I hope I've given you some options in case you go, you know, Kevin, they're all too big and they're too heavy and they're too this and too that. Hopefully you've seen some options there that go, hey, I can see myself carrying that and would then have all the capabilities that I would ever need and be ready for anything, but still, you know, not feel like I was weighed down or overburdened financially or, you know, whatever other way. So there you go. Gotta love hard use knives. Let me show you those knives one more time in case you missed one that you really want to see. I'm not going to do it in any particular order because I've just been setting them down. But we had the Rat Model 1. We had the Enlin EL08 or the Charade SCH 104. Literally the same knife. We had the SCH 304 from Charade. We had the Cold Steel Code 4 great blade. We had the Crawford Casper from CRKT. We had the ZT0560 in black wash. There's a bunch of versions of this. We had the Benchmade Contigo, and we had the Cold Steel Recon 1. Lots of awesome blades there, awesome options. I would highly recommend any of those knives, and hopefully one is just perfect for you. Talk to you later, YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I had a lot of fun making it.